This is Jason Romano from Sports Spectrum. Remember, success is a choice. And what choice are you going to make today?
Providing insights to help you grow your business, improve yourself, and add value to those around you. You're listening to the Success is a Choice podcast, where you get a peek into the lives of industry leaders as they share their stories with you.
Welcome to Success is a Choice podcast. I'm your host, Jamy Bechler. And today we have a special guest as Darrin Gray joins us. Darrin, along with former Indianapolis Colt Hunter Smith, co-authored The Jersey Effect, and he was a key person in the development of All-Pro Dads, the nonprofit founded by Hall of Fame football coach Tony Dungy. Darrin is a regular on the speaking circuit as he talks about family, fatherhood, serving, and leadership. He is currently the president and CEO of the Lions Lead Company. Darrin, welcome to the show.
My pleasure to be here today, Jamie.
Well, you joined All-Pro Dads in 2006. How did you first get involved with All-Pro Dads, and how have you seen it grow since you first came on board?
Well, how I got involved with All-Pro Dad was I was the general sales manager at the Indianapolis Star. I had a big budget and a lot of employees and a measure of responsibility, and I got a phone call from the Indianapolis Colts saying that we were going to have a brand new head coach. This was in 2002, that his name was Tony Dungy, and that we should pay attention to the charitable work that he wanted to accomplish. And so I had a team study up on who Tony was, what he was working on, and we fell in love with the guy, sort of who he was. Jamie, we pulled some funding out of our diversity and inclusion budget that was helping us to position our organization as a employer of choice in the marketplace. And we got involved with All-Pro Dad. Of course, I was behind the scenes getting to know Tony and the organization, the founder of the organization. His name is Mark Merrill. He and I became fast friends. And over time, I had an opportunity a few years later to move full-time into helping All-Pro Dad scale as an enterprise from what was a Tampa-based charity to coming to Indianapolis through our sponsorship in Indy. And then ultimately, I helped to scale that enterprise to Pittsburgh and to Minneapolis and to Kansas City and to places far and wide that wanted to learn how they could equip fathers to do their most important earthly job, which is to be what we call an all-pro dad.
Well, you mentioned working with Tony Dungy, and through the years, he seemed to be a special coach. He's a Hall of Fame football coach, but he also had a character and an integrity and a demeanor about him that's well respected by pretty much everyone. It's hard to find somebody saying something negative about him. What was your experiences with him, and what was that special sauce? Why was he so great as a coach?
Yeah, I've been around Tony in hundreds of opportunities and speaking engagements and events. And Tony is the same whether he's speaking in front of a group of 3,000 people or whether he's quietly mentoring or leading a Bible study with a small group. His convictions, his integrity are unwavering. And it's really easy to see why people follow him. His humble spirit, how he approaches life, is really just pretty simple in a lot of ways, but his influence has been really dynamic and world-changing, if you ask me.
Now, you've done more with NFL and professional football than just working with Tony Dungy. You've been a chaplain or spoken to many teams, but you've also taken a number of players overseas to Israel on some trips, and I believe you're planning to do that again. How in the world do you get NFL players to go overseas on trips, and tell us a little bit about that project?
Well, you're right, Jamie. I'm getting ready to take 25 NFL players, coaches, and alumni to the Holy Land. I'm doing that next spring. I can't wait to take them back again. How I get them to do it is I connect with them on emotional level. I serve them. I find ways to minister to them and their families. And then I invite them to join a journey where they can grow and they can learn and become the best forms of themselves. And the Holy Land is a place to go do that. We'll be on a bus ride. Imagine 25 players on a bus having Bible study together, but doing it as they walk in the footsteps of Jesus, as they walk in the footsteps of Paul. And it's a remarkable way for me to grow myself, but also to grow in relation with these remarkable men that happen to have worn the jersey in the NFL and happen to have a measure of fame in their life, but at the same time, they're just men. They're trying to grow, and doing that in the Holy Land is just a powerful way of getting that done for me.
Do you find that the people over in Israel, do they know American football? Do they know who some of these players are?
It's funny. The last time I was there, I'm thinking of a time we were in the Israeli market in Jerusalem, and I was with two players at that moment. One is named Israel Adonijah, who was an amazing player for the Bears team. In fact, he was playing on the opposing team for the Super Bowl XLI team that Tony won. And then I had a Colts player there with me by the name of Ben Utek, 6'7", just a giant guy. We were in the marketplace, and they didn't know who they were, but they could tell by the way these guys were carrying themselves that they were something special. And I tell you what, within a matter of moments, we had a crowd gathered round, and we had an awfully fun time there in Israel. And once you told them of the NFL connection, they immediately got that. And, you know, there is American football being played in Israel as we speak. It's an important growth opportunity for the NFL and for Israel. So yes, they did begun to do that. Now in this case, the next trip I'm going back with 25 guys, some of which are very notable. So they'll know who they are, I'm sure, and something that we'll have a lot of fun with.
Are you going to slide some footballs through customs, or are you going to have to get some footballs when you're over in Israel?
I think maybe I'll do both. I'll take one with me, but we are actually going to go to a football game while we're there, an NFL American football game while we're in Israel. So they'll have some balls, I'm sure, that are made of pigskin.
Nice. Now, you teamed up with 12-year NFL punter and Super Bowl 41 champion Hunter Smith to write The Jersey Effect. What was kind of the genesis of that book? Why did you want to write it? And, you know, what kind of feedback and effect have you seen since writing that book?
Well, thanks for asking. You know, that's been a passion project that I had for a long time. I eventually talked to Tony about it. I wanted to spend time writing a book that chronicled the Super Bowl championship season and all the remarkable men that were on the team that lived for things beyond themselves. And so I remember sitting in Tony's hotel room in New York City the day before he was headed up to be on NBC for Sunday Night Football, and talking about this idea to write the book, The Jersey Effect. And he began to help me think about how we could break it down: academic, athletic, social, spiritual. He began thinking about who the men were on the team that we could work with. And the first that came to mind for him was Hunter Smith. And then from Hunter, Jeff Saturday, Justin Snow, Tariq Glenn, so many others that lived a faithful life, but also wrestled with their own selfish desires at times to be famous. And we told these stories in a way that the common man could understand, and we have just had amazing feedback from the field. I mean, not 3 minutes before we talked today, I got a phone call from a woman in Ohio that had heard about the book and wanted to use it inside of their team, their football team, who her son is coaching for. So the word has gotten out, and it's just been a remarkable journey. This little book has sold very well, and it's one that continues to create a great impact, and we're thrilled about that.
Well, Hunter Smith had a very good career, very good punter, integral on that championship team. He's doing some other stuff now other than just writing that book. He's got his own band. Now, are you helping him with that band, or have you given him some ideas for some songs?
Well, I don't know that I've given him any ideas for songs, but I see Hunter every single week. He and I are close friends, and he's somebody that I respect tremendously. His moral compass is beyond reproach. And yes, the Hunter Smith Band continues to grow and thrive. He's doing his own songwriting. He's producing. He's an amazing man. And to have played in the NFL, that's really hard to do. But to make a living in the music business, in some ways, I think that's even harder. And so I'm so proud of Hunter and all that he's done and all that he's done to help me. I am just eternally grateful to him.
Well, in addition to the work that you did with All Pro Dads and the Jersey Effect book, you're now CEO of the Lions Lead project or company. How did you get involved in that? How did that come about? And because this is an organization that essentially transforms leaders and helps take them to a higher level. So tell us a little bit more about that and the work that you're doing right now.
Yeah, so I first encountered the Lions Lead 15 years ago. I got introduced to Dr. Dan Snively from a mutual friend that some of your listeners may know by the name of Chris Lamos. Chris is at Elevate Ventures now helping to fund some great startups. And long story short, he said, Darrin, this leadership assessment called the 7 Pillars is something that you should take to learn more about yourself from a behavioral perspective. And at the time, I hadn't thought deeply about it. I had been tested and prodded like a lot of other executives. I was working in the media business, like I mentioned to your listeners a little bit earlier. So I had taken Myers-Briggs and DISC and Hogan, and I had a pretty good sense of who I was and how I worked from a personality perspective. But this is different. It got me to stop and really think about my life and how it is that I behaved, because my behaviors are what becomes my habits, and my habits in so many ways, the positive ones anyway, lead to my life. And so I got into it. I became a student of this system. I began using it to help grow and get better. And 100 days ago or so, after many, many years of reflection and consideration, I had an opportunity to become the CEO of this enterprise, The Lions Lead. Your listeners can find out more at thelionslead.com, and they can log on to learn about how it is we're creating transformation inside of sports teams, corporations, working with exceptional leaders to help them become the best versions of themselves. It's a remarkable process, and one that I'm thrilled to be talking about with you today.
So what would you define, or how would you measure success? Our podcast is called Success is a Choice podcast. So what does success look like for the endeavors that you've been in?
Yeah, for me, this is pretty easy, and I think Tony talks about it a lot. And it's this idea that we're all on a journey from success to significance. And there's a lot of things that folks like your listeners, myself, you, Jamy, could do. But when we chase after significance in our lives, in other words, how we're going to help other people to reach their full potential, it really is the kind of life that I want to lead. And so I spend a lot of time working with other leaders, helping them to reach their potential. And in so doing, I'm teaching what I most need to learn, which is how I can become the best version of myself, to become the leader that I'm called to be. And so for me, that's, I think success and significance are linked, and that's what I'm chasing after, Jamy.
We'll return to our interview with Darrin Gray momentarily. Darrin has worked closely with Hall of Fame football coach Tony Dungy. Coach Dungy is definitely a man of integrity who has written some great books. Now, our friends at Audible are offering our listeners a chance to download a free Tony Dungy audiobook and get a free 30-day trial membership when you visit the website audibletrial.com/success is a choice. And if you already have all of Coach Dungy's books, you should still be able to find a book that suits your interest from their collection of more than 180,000 titles. Once again, download a free Tony Dungy book at audibletrial.com/success is a choice. And now back to our interview with Darrin Gray. You've done so much through the years with All Pro Dads, and we have a lot of parents in our audience who have sons or daughters that are playing sports. What advice would you have for them on how they can best help their son or daughter achieve and kind of maximize their success, but also maximize their potential and build character and learn those lessons that sports can teach?
Yeah, so we look at 5 dimensions of understanding when it comes to young people. First of all, I want to understand that whether or not they have grit and resilience. There's a lot of talk going on in the country about that right now, but we measure for grit and resilience. Then I look at their composure index. In other words, how do they hold up under pressure in sports or in other high-pressure areas of their life? Then I move to teamwork. Are they able to operate inside of a team concept, and how is it that they treat other people? Then I move over to self-leadership. Are they going to take responsibility for their own actions? Are they going to take the extra reps even when the coach isn't watching? And then finally, I look at self-awareness as an emotionally intelligent quotient that helps me to understand where a young person is on their journey to self-awareness, not only to understand themselves, but to understand how other people see them. And when you put those 5 things together and you measure, and you also add in some key measures around character, you're able to really assess where your child is, how it is that they need to grow, and how it is that you can help them. So this is the kind of work that I do with countless athletes through schools, as well as Division I, high school, pro teams, helping them to get clarity about who their players are. And then I have some coaching instrumentation that I use as well to help coaches then learn those same principles and practices, but then how to transfer those practices to their players to have higher levels of performance over time.
What do you think are some common traits or qualities that successful people have, either, things that you've demonstrated throughout the years or things you've seen from others?
Yeah, they don't make excuses. They get it done. They find a way that self-leadership, right? They take responsibility for their own actions. We all got circumstances. We all have hardships, but when it comes right down to it, hardships often prepare ordinary people for extraordinary destinies. And so we try to teach people how to respond inside their circumstances with a great attitude, great approaches which lead to them becoming the best version of themselves. So that's just one of many things that I try to teach and look for. But self-leadership, I think, in many ways is the most important thing, Jamie.
We talk a lot about success, but sometimes we can learn, we can become successful by learning from our experiences and learning from some of the challenges and obstacles that we've faced. What are some obstacles or challenges you face that you've been able to overcome, maybe a favorite failure that you've had?
Yeah, great question. So when we were trying to scale All-Pro Dad from Indianapolis, we were able then to scale it to the next city, which was Pittsburgh. And sort of the perfect storm that was happening in Pittsburgh at the time was they had a young coach and first-year coach by the name of Mike Tomlin, who's still there doing amazing things. Caught the vision for what we were trying to do, but how do you transfer the sort of knowledge and information from Tony Dungy, this prolific coach, to the next coach in order to get the program to thrive inside the Pittsburgh marketplace? And so the failing forward action that you're sort of asking about was just really trying to be as methodical as I could be to find the right kind of partners in that market to help build that up and grow that market. It did not come easy, but I tell you what, once we figured out the alchemy of how to take All-Pro Dad from Indianapolis to Pittsburgh, then it became much easier to then take it to Chicago and Minneapolis and Kansas City and beyond, because we began figuring out what that formula was. So I don't want to make it sound like it was easy, but I definitely failed forward in that environment. We were able to finally get it done with a lot of hard work, and Pittsburgh is better off for it now, and many other cities have followed.
Well, you are giving of yourself. You're pouring out, doing a lot of stuff in the leadership field. What do you do to help grow and develop and to fill your tank back up?
Well, I surround myself with really good people, Jamie, and I tell them that I'm grateful for them a lot. I just got a text a few minutes ago from a mentor of mine that I spoke into his life and said, I am so grateful for you because. And so by creating that virtuous cycle of always telling the people that are important to me that they're important to me, it allows them to then fill up my tank. So it's like serve someone, right, and get what you most need, which is the ability to be served. And I love doing that and just finding ways to make sure I've got great people around me. I run a mastermind group every Tuesday morning here in the greater Indianapolis area. I work with some remarkable leaders. I pour into them. They pour into me. That virtuous cycle is the kind of thing that I'm looking for. I'm involved in a Bible study every Friday morning. That's where I see Hunter Smith each week as we dive into the Bible together and continue to grow and learn. But I think that's the most important thing to me, is to finding great people and making sure they know how much I value and appreciate them. And wouldn't you know it, oftentimes that leads to them telling me that I've given them a measure of hope as well.
Speaking of great people, are there people or a person that you would love to meet or get to know that you don't currently already know?
You know, I used this on a Zoom call that I did just a couple of weeks ago with a group of remarkable leaders from around the country. I used this exact question, and I got to think about this. And, you know, it's got to be qualified with living or previously living. And, you know, if I could go back in time, I would love to sit at the foot of Jesus. I know that a lot of people probably say that, but I've got so many questions that I want to ask my Lord and Savior, that I want to understand more fully so that I can be the most effective disciple and disciple maker. But in terms of current people that come to mind, you know, I'm sure you've had people say this too, but I've gotten to meet Peyton Manning a number of times over the years, but I've never got to spend an hour with Peyton, just getting to know him as a person, what makes him tick, what made him so special. I've heard stories from Tony countless times, both privately and on stage, about what made Peyton special. But it's really pretty easy for me. I'd love to spend a private meal with Peyton and Ashley, and just to get to know him better and understand what makes him tick.
What would be a purchase of $100 that you've made in your lifetime that had a profound impact?
I got a ticket years ago, in fact, 1999, to go to a Promise Keepers convention. I did not really want to go. It wasn't in part of my game plan for that week, but I had a friend that was persistent. He said, "You should do this. Let's make it happen." Well, that friend happens to be my brother-in-law, and he and I went to that Promise Keepers convention, and my life has never been the same. As for me and my household, I will serve the Lord. I made a personal commitment that night that has allowed me to put my faith in Jesus Christ at the center of my life. He is the head of my household so that I can be the head of my household. And that simple purchase of a ticket to a Promise Keepers convention was the one that I came up with, and my life's never been the same.
That's a great answer. Promise Keepers, for those that you that may not be familiar, big Christian conference for men, and started by Bill McCartney, the former Colorado national championship football coach. So a great event for men all over the country. So great answer there. Great answer. What are some podcasts or books that you enjoy or would recommend?
Well, I don't know if your listeners are familiar with these, but there's one called Things You Should Know. There's another one called Hidden Brain, and then TED Radio Hour. Those are my three favorite. I am a podcast junkie. Not a week goes by that I'm not listening to a dozen or more different podcasts. That's why I was so thrilled to have you reach out to me, Jamy, so that I could be on your podcast, but also get poured into by your podcast. So I'm looking forward to downloading your podcast about Kevin Harrington and all the other great leaders that you've had on over the prior months. Can't wait, and just so pleased to be on with you here today.
Well, you mentioned Kevin Harrington. He was original Shark on Shark Tank, and he was on our podcast earlier this year. But if you could be on a reality show, which one would it be?
Well, you're alluding to my answer, which is the Shark Tank. You know, in two different dimensions, right? In one dimension, I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I've been an entrepreneur since a child. In some cases, I'm a social entrepreneur, right? I want to help other people grow and lift up their capacities. But now at the Lions Lead, I'm an entrepreneur helping other people grow using our behavioral assessments and leadership tools to get better. So I'd love to find a way to package that up. I've thought about it many times about how I could set that forth to go on to that particular show and see if I could get those guys to buy into the systems that I put together to scale it in ways that they might be able to help me uniquely scale my business, the Lions Lead. But in another dimension, of course, I see myself from time to time as someone that might have a measure of insight to offer others. I find myself counseling entrepreneurs on a regular basis, and I'd love to see myself, in a chair once I grow up someday to maybe have an opportunity to be like Kevin and to sort of envision myself on that show offering advice and counsel to young entrepreneurs trying to scale their businesses.
Yeah, it certainly would be nice to be in those chairs and be able to help out, have the money to be able to help out other people and make their dreams possible. You mentioned that you have an entrepreneurial mindset. Is there a productivity tool or an app or a piece of software that you really would have a hard time doing without?
Yeah, lots of them. The first one that came to mind when I was reflecting on this question is just OneNote. I've constantly got ideas rolling through my mind that I need to share with my team in order to collaborate more effectively. So OneNote is that productivity tool, but Zoom has changed the way that I conduct business. The ability for me to lead large groups of people and not have to fly to that city in order to give a keynote or do a training, the ability to do that over a wide network. I lead Zoom calls every single week. I use it as a tool, and it's one that I can highly recommend. It's the best group conference call video conference call strategy that I've ever seen, and I've used a lot of them, GoToMeeting and others, but for me, Zoom is the best.
Other than being an entrepreneur in the leadership space and working with all pro dads, is there a job or something that you would love to do if you could do anything in the world that you're not currently doing already?
I want to be a rock star. It's so funny that you ask, and my wife makes fun of me all the time, but I remember the first time that I heard Crosby, Nash, and Young, and heard their voices harmonizing and the way they played and sang, right? It was a really important moment for me, and there's a great movie, many of your listeners may have seen it, called Almost Famous. It's not a 5-star movie, but one that really speaks to me, and I'd love to be able to use my voice, use my guitar, and ultimately use my measure of charisma on stage to be a rock star. So anyway, that's not happening, Jamie, but that would be the dream if I could wave the magic wand.
Well, don't sell yourself too short now. I think we both know of somebody that might be able to help you out in that area. I think maybe a cameo at a Hunter Smith concert.
Well, I think it's talent I think it's the talent that I lack, not the hard work, but the talent. So we'll leave that for Hunter, but that's certainly a fun, wishful dream of mine.
Well, what is a favorite quote of yours or any parting wisdom you would have for our audience?
Talent is God-given. Be humble. Fame is man-given. Be grateful. Conceit is self-given. Be careful. I remember the first time that I heard Tony Dungy channeling John Wooden. That's a John Wooden quote that has spoken to me. But I remember the first time we were in a huddle. We were in Florida at a school, a 5-star school, high school, that these young people were wrapped around Tony's words. And he brought that quote, and it just made a profound impact on them. I could see the looks in their eyes as so many of them, were encountering this famous man in Tony Dungy, and him going, just be grateful for that. But don't be conceited, right? Be grateful, right? Be careful, be humble. And those principles translated to practices have made a big difference on my life. So that was the wooden quote that I wanted to bring to your listeners today, and one that has made a big impact on my life.
Always a winner when you go with the John Wooden quote. It's hard to go wrong there. What is the best way people can connect with you or learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, the easiest thing is check me out at All Pro Dad Leader. So you ALLPRODAD and then Leader. Crunch it all together. That's my Twitter handle. That's my Instagram handle. If you hit me on direct message on Twitter, I will respond to your question. I will respond to your desire if I can be of service. That's an easy way to do that. You can also find my bio and contact information on thelionslead.com. Track me down. I'd love to hear from you if I've sparked any imaginations in any of your listeners about the kind of leadership wisdoms and ideas that we've set forth. If they would be useful to you, I'd love to have a conversation with your listeners and see what we can do to serve them.
Well, I really appreciate your insights today. I know you're busy, so thanks for taking some time to join us, Darrin, and we'll be sure to put all those things in the show notes so people can definitely connect with you. And if you have a rock band and you're looking for a new member, maybe Darrin would be interested in coming for a tryout. So, Darrin, thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity. It's been my pleasure. Keep up the great work, Jamie, and can't wait to catch you down the road.
Thanks so much for tuning into the show today. I hope that you enjoyed listening to Darrin Gray. He's doing so much to help so many people, especially fathers, as they raise up their sons and raise up a next generation of leaders. And also, if you want to get that Tony Dungy audio book, please visit our friends at Audible. Their website's audibletrial.com/success is a choice. Thanks for listening, and if you haven't yet done so, please take just a quick second to hit that little subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Thanks a lot, and remember that success is a choice. What choice will you make today?